Chromosomes. Little strands of nucleic acids and proteins are the fundamental genetic instructions that tell us who we are at birth. Most people are born with 46 chromosomes, but each year in the United States, about 6,000 people are born with an extra chromosome, making them a person with Down syndrome. If you've ever encountered someone with Down syndrome, you know that they are some of the kindest, most joyful people you will ever meet. They truly have something extra. My name is Lisa Nichols, and I have spent the last 24 years as both the CEO of Technology Partners and as the mother to Allie. Allie has something extra in every sense of the word. I have been blessed to be by her side as she impacts everyone she meets. Through these two important roles as CEO and mother to Allie, I have witnessed countless life lessons that have fundamentally changed the way I look at the world. While you may not have an extra chromosome, every leader has something extra that defines who you are. Join me as I explore the something extra in leaders from all walks of life and discover how that difference in each of them has made a difference in their companies, their families, their communities, and in themselves. If you like this episode today, please go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen and leave us a 5-star rating. I'm excited to have Jason Weems on the show today. Jason is the CIO at Soleo Health. So Jason, I am so excited to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for making the time. I've really, really been looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, and thanks for thinking of me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I always like to tell our listeners how I meet my guests, right? They want to know how did you meet this person? And so you and I actually met a few years ago because our data analytics and AI practice director, Jake Gower, knew you.
Right.
And he's like, Lisa, you got to meet Jason. You're going to love Jason. And boy, was he right. You're such a great guy and an amazing leader. But then when we met, it was really funny, Jason, because we knew a lot of the same people. And I'll give a shout out to our mutual friend, Scott Richard.
Yes. Yeah. Scott is amazing. And actually I was talking to him, and what's funny is I had lunch with him the same day that I met with you, and it was not coordinated at all. So it's a small world for sure.
It is a small world. Yeah. Give a big shout out to our mutual friend, Scott. But you've had just an incredible technology career here. I'll just say this to you. I'll shout out another one of our friends, Tim Kessler, that you had worked with. Yes. And here is what Tim Kessler says about Jason Weems. He said, Jason Weems is a force multiplier. And so I am so excited to dig into your career and all of the leadership lessons you've learned along the way, because I know it's going to help our listeners. But before we do that, I'd love to go back to growing up. Take me back to the beginning, Jason, when you were in your mother's womb. No, I'm totally
okay.
But where did you grow up? What'd you like to do as a little boy?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I grew up in Farmington, Missouri, which is about an hour or so south of St. Louis. Pretty small town. My parents built a house when I was 1, so was there. Went to Farmington Elementary, middle, and high school because there's only one. And it was a great experience. I mean, for me, just being in a small town, in high school I baled hay and all the things. So definitely, it was good. I went to community college there at Mineral Area College, and then once I finished there, I knew I wanted to do something else. Like I would say, even during school, there was quite a bit of time until even middle of high school where I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I was a little bit kind of searching, and then I found, actually we had a computer teacher there that was had those computer classes and really got into it. And that's how I found computers, I guess, and really just clicked for me and connected. And so it was really, really great. In terms of how I grew up, I was kind of like to play games, would be on, whatever role-playing games, all that kind of stuff. And
like video games or
video games. Yeah, video games.
Really?
Games, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, because what's interesting, actually, just quickly, is that I was kind of a gamer as a kid. All my kids now, they do like games, but they're all into sports. And I didn't really do the sports thing much. And so I'm having to relearn how to be a sports dad and like soccer games and practice, all that kind of stuff. So it's interesting whenever you grow up and then you've got a certain set of interest, and then your
Yeah.
kids are in a different place, and then having to kind of reinvent yourself. So, but
Absolutely. So I have a
yeah,
question for you, and you can
yeah.
be honest with me. Do you
Okay, I'll
still
try.
game?
What is it? Do I still game? Yeah, a little bit, a little bit. I mean, not as much as I did. It's like I said, I used to do more of the role playing games, those kind of things. My kids are into a lot of the first person games, and they are so much better at it than I am. It's crazy because I feel like it should be transferable skills, and it's not as much as I want it to be. Like
Mhm.
they're really good.
Well,
Yeah,
I have to tell you this. This is so funny because our
yeah,
grandson loves the gaming. He
yeah,
loves
yeah.
Fortnite, and I
Fortnite.
don't
That's my
even,
kids are in a
yeah,
Fortnite for sure.
I don't
Yeah,
even know all of the ones that he plays, but he gets on with his little friends, from
yeah,
school, and he just loves it. He's 11.
yeah.
And one Sunday, our pastor, which we absolutely love, he started saying, he goes, yeah, he goes, I go into my man cave and I love to game. And he goes, I probably played some of your kids. And so,
It probably does.
yeah. And so Sawyer,
Yeah,
our grandson, was like, that is the coolest thing ever. Pastor
yeah,
Eric plays video games. We were just blown away. It was
yeah.
so funny.
That's,
But well, that's awesome. Well, so you went on to SLU. So you did decide you
I
wanted to
did.
do something else. I'm so grateful for that computer teacher.
Me too.
Huge
Yeah,
shout out
yeah,
to
yeah.
teachers, Jason.
Yeah, he was Mr. Murray. He was. I'm sure he's probably retired now, but we really wouldn't have had a program without Mr. Murray. Mr. Murray developed this whole. He basically had this class, and he would teach different types of programming. Visual Basic or Java or Pascal or whatever at the time. And he just had one class, and he would just do individual courses for people based on what they were interested in, multimedia, those type things. And again, I think outside of Mr. Murray, I'm not sure that we would have had it at all. So it's pretty amazing that he really created that atmosphere.
That is
And then,
wonderful. Teachers, oh, they deserve so much credit. They truly do. I can't
yeah, I agree.
tell you how many leaders I have interviewed, Jason, and they say a teacher in school is what inspired them to do what they're doing today. It's really now, was he in the industry before? Do you know? Was he only in academia or
I
had he
think he
worked in
was, and
industry?
then he was academic for a while. I think he did some work in the industry for a bit, but I don't fully remember, but I
Mhm.
believe so.
Yeah. So you went on, you decided to go into computers and get a degree from SLU. You got your undergrad from SLU and MIS, and then you went on to pursue your MBA from SLU as
Yes.
well.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this. So I know, like, when you started your career, you worked in two different financial services before joining Express Scripts in 2010.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily have to focus on those because I really wanted to really focus on when you went to Express Scripts because you had some amazing, amazing opportunity. For our listeners who may not be familiar with Express Scripts, I mean, Express Scripts is kind of an iconic St. Louis made company,
They
really.
are. They are. I think what's interesting is so when I joined in 2010, they were in the between 20 and 25 years, established, and they grew from just a couple of small pharmacies, really, really small, and were one of the fastest growing industries, honestly, in the country. And it was really, based out of St. Louis, and was just the growth track record there was amazing. George Paz was the CEO for a long time and was, iconic in St. Louis. And before that, to your point, I was in banking for 10 years at Citibank and a VC firm before. But really, I just continue to hear good things in terms of fast-paced culture. You've got to be able to keep up, but a lot of growth and lots of opportunity just to run with stuff at Express Scripts. And so that's what that drew me. You mentioned Tim Kessler. I think he's the one who even said, "Hey, you should think about," because we worked at Citi together. I think he's the one who even had introduced me to the opportunity. I didn't work for him at that time, but to come in and then so that's, yeah, I'm so glad I did, and it's been it was a very, very fast-paced company. And Express Scripts has been there, still is there now. They're now owned by Cigna. I think Cigna bought them maybe 3 years ago. So
Right.
yeah.
No, it is an incredible story. Jason, funny because Greg and I started our careers at McDonnell Douglas. And
Yeah.
I remember, in fact, I believe that it was a couple of McDonnell Douglas people that like started seeing us, and it was like a joint venture is how it started. And I just remember when we were at Mac, a lot of people were leaving McDonnell Douglas to go
Yeah.
work for this amazing startup.
Yeah.
Just an
Well,
incredible story.
especially past 2008 with the mortgage crisis, a lot of companies were reducing and they were growing. And so I think that whole time period, they brought in a ton of talent across really the St. Louis, well, across the country, but especially in St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
Just brought in some really, really smart people, and it was the talent, pull at that time was really huge. And so it was great for me because you get to learn from people, some really smart people in different areas, technology and outside as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a remarkable success story. And to your point, Cigna did buy them a few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And now they're like Fortune 15 on the Fortune 20
Yeah,
list.
12 or something. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah,
It's
I agree.
crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah,
But I do want to talk about your journey there. So when you came in 2010, you were brought in as the technology director of technology product management. You continued to ascend up the corporate ladder. Finally, digital transformation. You were a segment CIO. What were some of the key lessons that you learned along the way, Jason, about leadership specifically? And what is your own leadership style? And have you seen your leadership style evolve over the years of being in these different roles?
yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it was interesting. I came over to lead a lot of the finance organization, which was a good transition because I'd been in financial services for 10 years. As I went to Express Scripts, came in to support a lot of the rebates, pricing, those areas, and really standing up what was their product organization. We called it a business alignment team at the time, but it was really a product-based organization, which was interesting for me in terms of what I enjoyed doing and still continue to enjoy doing is having strong partnerships, driving toward roadmaps, those type things. So for me, it was an interesting way to come in, learn the business, get to understand healthcare, and then extend out. So I think a learning for me even there is find the bridge. As you're making a change, find the bridge, find places that you can come in and take what you've learned and carry that into something else. It allows you to come in and make some quick positive momentum and then learn and grow from the business from there. So that was clearly a learning and something that I believe helped me as I came in. I think it's as you continue to take on more and more responsibility, you have to shift from being the guy who knows all the answers and knows how to get everything done to making sure you've got the right team lined up
Mm-hmm.
and that you've got the right people in place to be able to make those decisions. And it's not that you're absent or don't understand what's going on. I think there's definitely a degree of being able to go in deep and understand and really probe as you need to when there's risk or when there's something that's important, but being able to get the team in place. And so that was something I had to learn as I continued to grow. It's not sustainable, quite honestly. The larger and larger the organization, I think at one time when I was in the care role at the end, I had near 1,900 people
Yes.
between employees and contractors. And so you've got people that are multiple levels in the organization. And so being able to, it becomes that much more important that you've got the right team in place and that they understand kind of the culture of where you're trying to go and the key aspects of strategy and what are the business objectives we're trying to achieve. To me, that I can't underscore that enough is that the larger and larger your sphere of influence and accountability, the more that becomes really important. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, that was a big learning. I mean, I think again, you can only sustain over time to the degree you've got the right people in place, and
Mm-hmm.
you can paddle a lot underwater for a while, but it's just not really sustainable long term.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
true.
go ahead.
Go ahead. You go. Keep going.
No, I was going to say, and I think I probably learned this from, we mentioned Tim, but then also just, even my pastor, but this notion of words matter becomes really important. There's the way, what understanding your audience and understanding, what they need, and kind of reading your audience is a skill set. And it's not something that was necessarily something that I was proficient at early in my career. You come in a bit with, this is my message and I'm going to share my message, and then you're going to receive my message the way I want to share it.
Right.
And that's really not always, often that's not the most effective way to communicate. Honestly, a big part of being effective communicators, understanding what your audience is looking for, whether that's a business partner or someone on your team, a peer, a leader, a superior leader, any of those type things, understanding what their objectives are, and then how you are helping them achieve those objectives, and you get to an alignment in terms of that, shared objectives, I think becomes really important. And the words you use to be able to resonate with them, and so that it makes sense to them, becomes really important. So being intentional around your words based on, again, what others are, understanding their objectives, becomes really important. I'm also a fan of, there's a lot of research in the scientific world around like neuroplasticity, which is like brain pathways and the way that you think over time, and that you create, you create plasticity, or basically you create patterns in your brain. And so I think it's the words we say influences the way we think. So
Mhm.
and the way we think influences what we do. And so I think it becomes really important, because it's a bit of the start, the foundation for that. And so being really intentional around that, about the words we say, and that it's actually going towards something, and it's not complaining or something like that. We can be real, but am I speaking into where I'm going, or am I not?
Mhm.
And if I'm speaking into where I'm going, it's actually going to line my brain up in that direction, and I'm going to move in that direction, versus talking about all the things that aren't happening, or the things that aren't working the way that I thought they would. And I think that's really important. And I think tied into that is this notion of being authentic. And I think there's an authentic component to that too, which is like, if I'm always going towards something and I'm using words towards something, I can have the same conversation whether I'm in a board meeting or I'm having a one-on-one with someone on my team. And
Mhm.
so again, I think if that's what's driving you, and you're driven toward a path forward, it all just lines up. So
I there's so much packed into what you just said. I don't know that I can unpack it all, Jason, but the thing that just resonates with me, communication is so important. And sometimes we think, oh, communicating, meaning the words that I'm saying. But what you just said to me was, it's so important to understand your team and what they need from
yeah,
you and how they
yeah,
receive that. And so, what that really requires is listening.
yeah. There's an
Wonderful
empathy. There's
listening
an
skills.
empathy and listening for sure. Yeah,
Yes. And the
yeah,
empathy that comes, yeah, putting yourself in their shoes. There's so much goodness in what you just said. That's really good. Well, um, let's see. Let me ask you this question. Do you have any stories maybe about some challenges you face? Because again, we've been talking about this crazy journey
yeah,
and trajectory that I think Express Scripts made something like 9 or 10 different acquisitions, big acquisition with Medco. I remember when Tim Wentworth came in from
yeah, yeah.
Medco, which
Yes,
another amazing CEO.
yeah,
So I mean, it was kind of a crazy journey that you guys were on, lots of changes. Can you
yeah.
remember, like, any stories, or think about any stories as you're going through this, how your team overcame some of those challenges, and maybe even resistance to change? Leading
Yeah,
change is important too, as a leader,
yeah,
knowing how to do that, right?
yeah. I think that's a good. To your point, lots of acquisition and from Express Scripts and Cigna. Quite honestly, at large organizations, but especially there, a ton of integration. There was some activity with WellPoint, and Express Scripts and Medco came together and kept the Express Scripts banner, or branding, and then you've got Cigna. A couple things come to mind. So when Express Scripts and Cigna, Express Scripts and Medco, sorry, came together, that was in the 2012 time period. It was massive. You have two large pharmacy benefit managers, or two large pharmacy companies coming together. In many cases, kind of the one and two, or the top five for sure, top three in the country. And so, as you're bringing that together, just a massive amount of change, and also just cultural differences.
Yes.
And both of them, both companies, very competent, both very successful. Otherwise, they wouldn't be to where they were at. But very, sometimes you've got these vertical integration, and sometimes you got horizontal. Vertical being more of where you've got, in the supply chain, one is higher than the other. This is definitely a more of a horizontal. Had a lot of overlapping services and those type things. So a lot of kind of uncertainty there too. I think a couple things that stood out to me in that time period was, it wasn't perfect by any means, but I thought what was interesting was this the approach that really got in to come in and say, hey, we need to make some decisions quickly, because if we don't, we're going to spin on these things for a long time, and it's going to be 3 years later. There's so many examples in the market or in the industry where companies come together and then they have multiple adjudication systems, multiple pharmacy systems, and it just creates this notion of tech debt and sprawl, and then it gets hard to get things done because you've got to make changes in so many different places.
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing that was really interesting and that I felt like went well there was this ability to make decisions, kind of like, it's the 80-20 rule, right? It's the ability to come in, understand enough, and you're not going to make perfect decisions, but make kind of quick decisions, and then be able to get moving and then adjust. I mean, it's almost this whole notion. There's a lot of focus, or a lot of the market, especially in technology, shifted toward this continuous improvement. Make a decision, make it informed, use data to make the decision, but get started and then adjust from there. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like doing that at scale is not always easy, and it's there's a resistance to change too when it comes to leadership, because what if we made the wrong one,
Yes.
right? But I thought it was interesting how, as Express Scripts came together, we made some decisions in like the first couple of weeks post close, and we came down with very aggressive timeframes to get those things done. And
Mm-hmm.
again, it wasn't perfect, but I thought for me, it was a learning that the importance of making a call using data, but making a call and getting going. When you fast forward, you'll be in a better place, and
Mm-hmm.
not getting stuck or stagnant in terms of overanalyzing or having to have the next level of going. I need 85. I need 90. I need 95, and this polarizing effect. For me, that was it was an interesting use case or case study, if you will, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of how to make decisions and go with it and then adjust from there. So that was
Mm-hmm.
one. I think as you bring together organizations or even have lots of change, what becomes really important is that you go back to the fundamentals, which is, as an example, within the pharmacy space, which I was leading the pharmacy space at the time, was our mission hasn't changed. We're continuing to service patients. We need skill. We need to have a really strong engineering department, or whatever departments those are, engineering, user experience, digital, etc. Like, this is still part of our mission. So tying it back to the mission, tying it back to the work that we do, that you tie back to the anchor, if you will, of what's still stable, and understanding other things will change, but we're going to do the right things. We value our people, those kind of things, I think helps, because
Mm-hmm.
there's so much uncertainty when there is change that people are always like, well, what does this mean to me? What is this? And I think if you can take it back to keep doing what you're doing, and we want your input to this process. It's not perfect, but I think it goes a long way in terms of helping people find some stable ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Powerful.
sticking with the core values. The core values
Yeah.
have not changed. The mission has not changed.
Yeah.
But maybe the way that we deliver is going to be a
What we
little bit
value in many
differently.
cases hasn't changed. Some of it will change, but a lot of it
Mhm.
hasn't. And so the more you can find those commonalities and share that, it gives people a place to feel a little bit more stable,
Mhm.
which is really important during change.
Agreed. Oh, that is so good. That is so good. So tell me this. I mean, we already talked about it, but at the end, I think you were managing over a $250 million budget. You had 1,900 plus people in the organization. Building high performing teams is critical, right? And we talked about that at the very beginning. It's all about the people. So what, for you, Jason, specifically, when you're building a high performing team, what are some of those traits that you look for in the members as you're adding members to the team?
Yeah, so I think there's a good question. I mean, I think clearly, as you my team changed, vacillated in size and scale over time, but as you've got team and getting the right people in place, I think there's an aptitude and an attitude component to that. So from an aptitude, do they understand like what good looks like? Do they understand their craft, right? So if it's engineering, do I have somebody that's engineering minded, that knows what good looks like when it comes to engineering, that knows where to go to figure out? They may not have all the answers, but they know where to go, and they have a way to really make sure that we're moving the organization along within that space, and they're going to surround themselves with people that are going to keep them sharp. So there's this aptitude part of, do they get it? Um, and the attitude side is more of like, are they looking forward to the challenge? Because there's always going to be a challenge, right? There's always going to be some challenge, and maybe it's a people challenge, maybe it's a delivery challenge, maybe it's a culture, whatever. Do they lean into those challenges, and do they view those as, do they get revved by that? Is it like, hey,
Opportunities, right.
we can go solve this thing, like we're going to get this done, and it's going to be hard, but we're going to figure it out. Those are the type of people that I'm looking for, because we want to do hard things, and the reward, it's hard, but the reward is big. So finding people that have that type of mentality or mindset becomes important. I'm big on accountability, and I talk a lot about it with my team in terms of, when we say something, we should do it, right? As long as we're doing the right things, right? If we still believe in it, like if we're like, hey, we made a mistake, yeah, don't go after stupid things. But if we said we were going to do something, it should be hard to turn away from that. And so I call it our say-do ratio. Like, we should have a high say-do ratio when it comes to, we said we're going to do it, we're going to deliver it. It keeps us accountable to not taking the easy road, but also there's a level of confidence that it instills in the organization, that if technology says they're going to get it done, they're going to get it done, or they're going to come back to me and they're going to say, hey, I've got risk, and this is what we're doing about it, and I need your help. Or you make it about, it's a we problem. It's not it's not a defensive thing. It's a, hey, we need help. We've got a challenge, and this is what I'm doing, and this is
Right.
what I need to do, and I'm going to come back next week and I'm going to let you know. But this, again, owning it, if you will, is something that I look for in my team. A lot, I've been known to kind of say, don't be a victim sometimes, where it's like, oh, I don't have this, I don't have that. Well, what do you need to get there? And what do you need from me? And, flip the conversation a little bit. I think, to me, it's a mindset.
That's so good. That is so good. Aptitude and attitude. I'll never forget. I'm a big Southwest fan. You and I kind of talked about Southwest prior to hopping on here. And I remember a long time ago reading The Southwest Way, and Jason, like Herb Keller, the founder of Southwest, said, he hired for attitude and trained for skills, but attitude was so important. And sometimes that's something you can't necessarily teach, right? I mean, you have agility. People, listen, I'm kind of the mindset. I know that our IQ is kind of set for us, but I'm kind of one of these people that I'm like, hey, if there's something you need to grow in, you can grow in it. There is so we do need to be agile, but I do think
I think there's modeling, right? People, you see people, hey, I saw how they handled this situation, I want to do more of that. And there's this notion of like, I'm going to get uncomfortable, and I'm going to do it even though it feels awkward for a bit, until it becomes less awkward, and then that's how I respond.
Absolutely. Well, I've got so much more I want to talk to you about, and you're so amazing. I mean, you and I could sit here for 10 hours, but we're not going to do that to our listeners. But we do need to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Jason Weems on the Something Extra podcast.
Hey there. In a challenging business climate like this, savvy leaders look to technology to find an edge. This can mean the difference between staying ahead of the curve or playing catch-up. It's time to collaborate with the highly skilled experts at Technology Partners. Our team of technologists draws upon decades of experience for your project, with each bringing a passion for solving problems and a track record of success. How can we help you overcome your biggest technology challenges? Visit technologypartners.net to book a free consultation with one of our leaders.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Something Extra podcast with my friend, Jason Weems. So, Jason, I know that you were a sponsor for this leadership program when you were at Express Scripts Cigna that was focused on developing and equipping leaders within the workplace. Can you tell us a little bit more about that program, and especially this concept of TPOV?
Yeah, happy to. So there was a program that was developed. was a huge fan. It was really focused on leading self, leading others, and then leading through change. And there was a couple of things wrapped into that. So first of all, you have to know who you are as a leader to be able to lead others effectively. If you're not clear on who I am and how I want to lead, it's really hard to lead others or even to lead change over time. You vacillate a lot. So I think one of the things that become really important, and there was a lot of tenets of the program. We did things like situational leadership and emotional intelligence, and I think even in the last segment we talked a bit about this empathy piece, which is being emotionally intelligent, understanding what other people, how other people are coming into a situation and how I'm coming into it, being aware, which is an area that you can grow. We talked about can you grow. That's an area where you actually can develop over time. But one of the things that I loved about the program was this notion of TPOV, which is a teachable point of view. There was a book by Noel Tichy called The Leadership Engine. And one of the things that came out of that was this notion of having a teachable heart, and which is really, am I open to learn? Am I able to learn? Do I know who I am in terms of a leader, and getting crisper on that. So one of the core tenets, and I think Vicki Wheeler actually put together some of the programming that got created, but one of the core tenets was, going through and saying, okay, who am I as a leader? And being able to articulate that. And a lot of times people can't do it up front. Like it's, what's your elevator pitch? Who are you? What kind of leader are you? It's really hard. It's like, well, I'm this, or, and so getting crisp on that and takes some work to kind of do some soul searching and saying, what do I actually believe in? And what drives me? And what are those core beliefs that I have, as a leader? And going through that exercise, it's interesting because what I found was you go through and you start to think about it. I journal. I'm big on journaling. I think journaling helps me process. I think people process things in different ways. For me, journaling or writing is helpful. I get things out in written word that I can't always get out in, verbal. So it's interesting for me to be able to. So I went through this process of trying to say, okay, what do I believe? What are my core beliefs? And you write out a bunch of different things, and then you distill that down over time. What are the things that resonate the most? And then you start to get feedback from people. And so this whole exercise of going through that was really helpful for me. The output of that is a more distilled view of these are my core beliefs, or these are things that matter to me as a leader, and they're things that drive me. And it's helpful because it does a couple things. One, it helps me have a grounding point. This is what I believe, and it's a reference point to go back to. Am I adhering to these beliefs? I'm making a decision because I'm in a stressful situation. Is the way I'm responding in alignment with who I said I want to be and the way I want to lead, or am I not? And if it's not, it's a good check. Say, actually, this isn't lined up with how I want to respond. And I know I'm in a stressful situation, but it's a good reference check, if you will, or grounding point. The other thing I think it helps do is, as you've got those that work with you, it allows you to communicate, where am I coming from? There's more than one way to do this. There's user manuals that kind of say what, there's all kinds of things that can, but I think for me, it was an interesting way to communicate that. And even for my team, as I went through this exercise, and they say, oh yeah, I can see that. Oh yeah. Oh, you're doing that because this is, it even connects the dots sometimes for your people that have been around for a while, or that you worked with for a while, and they start to, it threads it together a little bit. You're doing this because this is really important to you. And I maybe didn't realize that originally. So it's a very individual thing, but it's an interesting way to, both have a reference ground guide for yourself, as well as a way to really share with others the way that you're wired almost. Some things that came out for me, and I hit on some of this in the first, was the notion of accountability. Again, being really focused on accountability. One thing I didn't hit on before was, I believe you have to be accountable for yourself, but you also have to hold others accountable in a mutually respectful way, right? It doesn't mean that you're, calling people out or in ways that feel not respected, but also saying, hey, look, I'm committed. I need you committed too. When it comes to delivery type things or whatever, like I think becomes really important, because we're in this together, and we both need to step up, and that's what's going to actually allow us to be successful. And so this notion of high accountability for self and others is really important. Another one is just the role of technology. So we as technologists, we're technologists by trade. Maybe you're a developer, maybe I'm a product person, maybe I'm a security person, maybe I'm a desktop, administrator, whatever. We're still business leaders. And so having that hat, or really kind of saying, hey, how is what I'm doing? So first of all, do you know what the goal, do you understand the goals and mission of your organization? If not, you should probably ask, right? Get clear on that. Like, where are we trying to go? What are we trying to do? Understanding that first and foremost allows you to have an anchor or something, or point to go toward.
Right.
And then at that point, it's like, what am I doing? What outcomes can I drive to help achieve that? And so being outcome oriented, this notion of I'm a business leader, I'm a leader within the organization, and you have different degrees of, depending on your role, you'll have different degrees of influence in different spaces, but you still have a degree of influence, whether it's in your team, whether it's in your space, whether it's in your division, maybe on a company level, whatever. Like, understand your sphere. How do I influence that toward, an outcome that's going to allow us to achieve where we want to go? To me, is really important, and it's a mindset required. It's not like, hey, I have these things that I was asked to do and I did them, right? And that's good. You should do them because that's part of your job, right? And that's part of my job. But there's a bit of like, okay, how am I actually making this place better? And that's just it's a cultural way of thinking. And so for me, I'm a big, again, you asked earlier about what things draw you. People that have that mindset or can embrace that mindset, I believe over time you'll find that they're often some of the people that are most successful, because they're thinking about their contribution, and they have a mindset of, what else can I do?
So good. They're so good. Seriously, just what you just said is so good. The accountability, holding yourself accountable, holding other people accountable. And even, sometimes, Jason, like you said, that requires hard conversations and candid conversations with people, which sometimes does not feel comfortable. But here's what I do believe, and we don't use the word love a lot in business, but I think we should love our people enough to hold them accountable and to say, hey, don't think I'm telling you this because I'm getting on to you or whatever, or being a jerk. I mean, I'm wanting you to be the best you can be, and to be the best organization we can be. We all need to do our part, right?
Yeah, there's a piece, like, well, there's a value component. Like, I value you and your contribution, and so there's to me, again, I'm talked about accountability, but there's accountability of like, hey, we're in this together. We're in the same boat. I need you to row too, right? Because if you're not rowing with me, like, we're not gonna be as effective as a whole, and that's part of being effective as an organization. Part of being effective as a technology team is we're rowing in the same direction, and we all are going the same way. Right. And so I need your help, right? I need your help, because our boat will go faster if you're rowing too.
Yeah. That's so good. So good. Well, let me ask you one other quick question about, and I want to talk about AI a little bit. I've had sidebar conversations about AI. Everybody's talking about AI. But, I really do believe that people are our greatest gifts, and it's our job as leaders to steward those gifts, right? So let me ask you this. How many people did you guys put through? What was the protocol, I guess, if you will, could anybody just sign up and say, hey, I want to go through that program? Did you do it in cohorts? Can you tell us a little bit tactically? And did you guys develop this? You mentioned Vicki Wheeler. Did Vicki pretty much orchestrate this, or was it an outside program?
So I think there's so there's kind of two things. So one is this notion of this leadership program. I think Vicki was instrumental in terms of upfront defining it. And then, yes, that's true. And Vicki's an amazing leader, and very, very thoughtful, and very, one of the most, we talked about empathy before, but, caring people that I know. So yes, for sure. When it comes to AI or artificial intelligence, it was somewhat different. I think for me, the AI, we in a role that I was at, we had a kind of an AI center of excellence, which is this group that was brought together to look at leveraging artificial intelligence, machine learning, kind of higher level learning, to be able to drive out, to embed into the way we build our software, and to drive efficiency. And so that was really the goal, was to be able to do that. What's challenging then, and still challenging now, is getting good talent. What becomes really hard is finding the people, and finding the people at a cost that's, that you can manage depending on your budget and organization. It can be expensive. And so one of the things that we did was we wanted to get in a couple of strong leads that had experience, that had been in the space, that understood modeling and just in some of the notions, and then make sure that you get them in a place where they can start to play that tech lead role, if you will. And then we started to bring in more junior individuals and started to train them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and almost like, kind of with training wheels, whatever, they come in, they start to run, then you start to, becomes this mentor type of relationship. And over time, they become more and more proficient.
Mm-hmm.
That's a technique that we've used in a few places where it's hard to find skill sets. Is you've got to have people that know what good looks like,
Yes.
that are in a level of influence and within those areas that can help bring up the team, if you will, and make sure that you're building in the right way, and that you're applying the right level of the right competencies within in the right structure and all those things. So I think having those people that really help drive the direction become really important, and that they understand kind of the mission of the organization, those type of things. But then bolstering those with people that are hungry.
Mm-hmm.
This whole aptitude side is really important if you're learning something new. Like
Right.
if I need to make sure the people that you're bringing in that are going to learn have to be hungry. They have to be willing to learn new things. They have to be okay with being uncomfortable and, stubbing their toe a little bit through the process. And we as a leadership team have to be able to support them in that journey.
That's right. Make it a safe place to do that, right, Jason? They're not going to be penalized for stumping their toe, right? So, wow, there's just so much more we can talk about here. But I really want to move into what you're doing today. So, summer of 2023, you made the conscious decision to step away and just take some time. What did you do? I mean, you said you needed time to get healthy, physically, spiritually, mentally. What'd you do with that time, Jason?
Yeah, no, it's a few things. So yes, I took some time off last year, which was honestly really healthy for me. It was helpful for me. Just kind of reset and kind of unwind a bit, kind of get to a place where I'm like, hey, I'm ready for this next thing. Kind of recharge is probably the right word. And it was nice because I got to spend some time with my family. We did some trips. And honestly, I got to do some things that I just didn't have quite the time to do before. I took my kids to school every day or most every day, or, made them breakfast in the morning and picked them up from school, and just, had the flexibility of doing some things that I wasn't able to do on a consistent basis before that. Which was nice. And it was nice even for my wife and I just to have some time to, run to the mall on Tuesday afternoon or whatever, to just kind of just run, do errands together and stuff. So it was a good time just to reconnect with my family and recharge a bit. I also used the time to do some internal, like,
internal work,
just learning around, the homework,
yes,
artificial intelligence, did some work on Gen AI, and just trying to brush up on those things. And I honestly just go a little deeper there, which was fun for me. It was interesting, and it helped me in terms of just, again, understanding where the newest trends were, and started to reach out to my network too. Just to start to understand what are people focused on right now. And so it was an interesting, I think of it almost like a market check, if you will, just with my network, just to say, where are people going? What are you doing? And so it was a learning period for me. What was interesting, I would say, I wasn't actively looking for a good part of last year. I started looking last year in terms of what is my next role, what am I going to do next, and had a couple interviews, and really what I learned pretty quickly was that I wasn't very clear. I wasn't very clear on, like, what is my brand, who am I, what am I focused on. It was a little bit, I went in a little unstructured into some of those conversations, and so I had to step back a little bit and do some work to think about, almost like we talked about before, like, who am I, what's my brand, what has my journey been, what do I want to do, and get crisp on that. And it was a process, honestly, to go through, and it took some reflection, and it took some time. Just, I mentioned journaling, but I took some time to really get crisp on that. And so I think it was a healthy process for me, honestly, just even to re-anchor inside, as well as and through the job search process, but then also it was helpful for me even as I'm coming into a new role, just to be really, crisp
Clear.
on, hey, this actually aligns well with what I was looking for, and this is, and so it's almost a, um, it, I don't know, it's just clarity. It
Yeah.
was helpful from a clarity perspective. So,
I think it's
so,
gonna be
so that,
really I think that's gonna be really helpful because there's a lot of people that I always say we kind of get in this autopilot kind of mode sometimes, Jason, and
yeah,
it's not a bad thing, but it's just the reality, right? When you've
yeah,
got a
right,
big job and you're going through the motions every day, but really taking that time to really step back and say, what is it that I really want to do? What drives me? And kind of you had said before, it's kind of going back to the basics,
yeah.
and kind of re-anchoring yourself basically. So,
What's interesting on this topic is my wife was very supportive through this process in terms of she's like, this is a great opportunity. What do you like to do? What gets you excited? Like, do you want to do consulting? Do you want to do like whatever,
mhm,
like, and so it was interesting where she was kind of like, take this time and just figure out, like, try stuff. Like, does this get me excited? Does it not? And it was actually kind of freeing to be like, yeah, I should do that. Like, it was and I hadn't necessarily approached it in that way up front. You kind of have this mindset of like, I've been on this, a path, and you think that your path looks the same. And it's a good time sometimes to say,
mhm.
is my, is my path, is that the way I want my
Am I
path
on
to
the
go?
right path?
I have control on that.
Yeah,
That's
for
right. And I
sure.
can try things. And I don't have to have it all figured out right now. And that's okay.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Well, you took the role of the CIO for Soleo. It's a company that's based in Frisco. I think it's a PE-backed firm. Is that
It is.
correct?
It is.
Yeah.
That's right.
So tell our listeners a little bit about the company, what they do, what their mission is, why were you drawn to this
Yeah.
company and this role in particular?
Yeah. Yeah. Soleo Health, it is a private equity owned or backed company. You know, it's in the pharmacy space in many cases. It's supporting complex patients with complex therapies. So think of that as maybe they need infusion support, nursing support, those type things. So they're going to be, the sicker of the sick patients. And it's a very much a based organization focused on providing that care, getting patients the right care that they need. One of the things that I liked about the mission was that they talked a lot about simplifying complex care was one of the three. If you go out to their website, um, to me that resonates. My middle daughter, Olivia, she was born with some health issues, congenital heart defects. So she had a hole in her heart, as well as, autism. And so what you learn is that even though you're in healthcare and you think it should be really easy, it's not always easy.
Mhm.
And so even things that you're like, hey, I should be the best at this, getting access to care or getting through a prior auth or whatever that is, I should be the best at this.
Right.
And it's still hard.
It's
And
hard.
so having a company that's really focused on making that complex care simple and getting people the care that they need, because of whether you're a caregiver or a patient or just, have a loved one, that's what you're focused on, is how do I make sure and so having a company that's focused on that is really great. And yes, they're based out of headquarters in Frisco. Just resonated with the team too, the management team, the CEO, CFO, and some others, the COO, and it just was
Good fit.
yeah, it just felt like a good fit. Yeah,
Good fit. And you're
good.
excited.
Yeah, I'm very
Well,
excited.
let me ask you this, and then we're going to talk about. I guess I've got two more questions for you.
Okay.
You've got a lot of hats that you're wearing,
Mhm.
Jason. You're the dad of three kids.
Yeah,
You're the husband to Jillian. You
yeah,
are a CIO. You also serve on a lot of boards. You're the president of one of the boards. What do
I
you
was.
do?
Yes.
What do you do to prioritize self-care? I mean, are there
Wow.
things that you do
Yeah.
specifically or routines that you have
Yeah.
that you think might help our listeners?
It's a good question. I think I'm an early riser. I get up pretty early.
How
5-ish.
early? How early?
5-ish. 5-ish. I mean,
Private?
for some people that's not early, but
Yeah.
5-ish. Um, and I've been in this kind of constant routine of using that time to do a couple things. One, if I'm gonna, well, I exercise probably 4 times a week just because I'm kind of in that routine. But I think it helps. Like even throughout your day, getting up in the morning, do whatever. Been doing this class at F45, but it's, whatever, do a class, go to the gym, work out at home, go for a run, whatever, but doing something active. To me, I actually feel like I have more energy. I know I do. I have more energy during the day if I do something in the morning, even if it's 30 minutes, 45 minutes or whatever. A lot of times when I don't do that, or if I'm not in the routine, what I'll find is mid-afternoon, I'm in this lull, I'm kind of tired. And I notice when I'm more consistent about doing, taking care of myself physically and eating well and all those things, I just feel better and I have more energy throughout the day. So for me, that's, it's important. It's a habit, but it's important, and it's something that I prioritize, whether I'm busy or not. I was traveling this week, Monday through Thursday, and I got up every morning and went to the gym at the hotel. And it's not that you have to do that, but for me, it's important, so I prioritize it.
Right.
So that's one. I think the other is, I mentioned journaling, taking time to journal. And one of the things that I heard that resonated with me, and I believe, is this notion of you're the same person, or being the same person, whether it's a professional or personal. I spent a lot of the first part of my career, first half at least, having a very separate lines. Like, this is who I am at work. I would answer this question, well, how are you? Well, if I was at work, I'm this. If I'm home, I'm this. And I think the more you start to blend those things together, I think it's healthy. Again, don't have, there's guidelines and all those kind of things. Like, you can't, like, be smart.
Yeah.
But the more you can blend those things together, the better, because I am who I am, and I want to be consistent across those things. So as I think about things like journaling, it's not one or the other. It's just journaling about who do I want to be, what kind of, like, so, or, what am I focused on right now, and what am I working on right now? To me, that's really, it's important. The one thing I'm doing right now, which is kind of interesting, I joined, there's a program called Always Adventure. It's a friend of mine, he's kind of stood this up. It's a group of guys, but they're getting together, and so for a year long, we're committing some time for the next year to get together and just really focus on, who are we in terms of, how are we supporting our families? Who are we? What are we working on? How do we live adventurous lives? How do we start to be, more present in terms of who we are? Like, this intentionality around being a man, and, we're just being a, father, all the roles that we are, all the hats you mentioned. So for me, that's something that I've committed to. There's a time commitment, and, an investment in terms of doing that. But for me, it was really important. And
so it's a small group of guys, kind of like almost like an accountability group.
That's right. So it's kind of an interesting, you find your thing. But for me, it was, what also was really important through that process was that I started to get crisp on, like, what do I want out of this engagement? If I'm going to commit this time, there should be, what do I want to improve on? It's not like I don't want to be haphazard about it. I want to be intentional, and so being crisp on what are the 2 or 3 things that I'm looking to, create sustainability. I think one of the interesting parts of committing a longer period of time, like a year, is it allows you to start to retrench. You do something for a short period of time and it's easy to do things, but it's not sustainable. The more you can retrench the way you're thinking, again, we talked about neuroplasticity, whatever, the more you can retrench the way you're thinking, the more it'll become permanent. So the goal isn't to be perfect. In fact, that's one of the things Vicky used to say. It's not perfect. It's, it's not perfect.
Progress.
It's permanent. Permanent. It's how do I make things continue?
Yeah.
And so for me, that's
good. That's good. Well, goodness gracious. Like I said, I could just keep talking to you forever and ever, but I want to ask you, because this is something I ask every guest, what is something extra that you believe every leader needs?
I think take stock of the people around you. I think that's one of the things I'm learning right now, and even in the program I'm in, is it's easy to take, whether it's your family, your people you work with, whatever, for granted. And so kind of step back and, like, be grateful. Be grateful for the people that that I wake up next to, or my daughter, who I get to, like, walk to the bus, like the time that you have, and just being, it's really easy to be, to get used to it. You get into the routine, I think, is what we talked about earlier. And then, shake up your routine. Like, sometimes we need to abrupt it. Like we need to abruptly adjust it and just say, you know what, I'm really thankful. I'm really grateful. And then communicate it, because it's not always about like, hey, what happens if they get hit by a bus? Sure, that's true. But like, this is the time that we get. So how are we investing in those people around us? And I'm not perfect at this by any means. And it's just something I'm working on. But for me, that's really important. And I think, I don't do it enough. And I don't know that, I see it modeled as much as I feel like we should. We get stuck into our phones and all kinds of things. And I have a phone and I use it all the time. It's not that, but you get like, it was crazy for me. I was at the airport yesterday and I was waiting for my flight. It was a little bit delayed. And I looked around and I'm like looking at everybody, and everyone is like this.
Yes.
Like literally 80% of people, I was counting them. I'm like,
glued to their phone.
2 out of 10 were not. And again, this is not a phone shaming. I'm sure like 10 minutes later, you could have looked over and I would have been in the same list, but
right.
But it's interesting how much we get sucked into like the immediate. And so
I agree.
That's the thing that resonates with me, at least that's kind of top of mind for me right now.
I've got a good friend that says, be present where your feet are.
Yeah.
So if you're with your family, be present there. Don't be thinking about work. If you're at work, be present with that. And so boy, everything you've said, Jason, I'm just like, whoo, everything resonates with me. I just appreciate your time so much. Thank you so much. You've been traveling. You just got back late last night and you're on the podcast with me today. And I just want to tell you how grateful I am.
Thank you again.
Thank you for listening to today's show. Something Extra with Lisa Nichols is a Technology Partners production. Copyright Technology Partners, Inc. 2019. For show notes or to reach Lisa, visit tpi.co/podcast. Don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or wherever you listen.